Welcome to Pick Up and Deliver, the podcast where I pick up my audio recorder when I step off the train and deliver a podcast to you while I walk home. I'm Brendan Riley. Good morning from Chicagoland. It's Friday, March 16th. I am pleased to be able to bring a new episode of Pick Up and Deliver to you. I'm walking home from bringing the kids to school, and it is darn chilly out. High 20s, I guess, would be the temperature, which is hat and glove weather. It's a little frustrating because once March rolls around, people in the Midwest tend to start thinking of it as springtime, and we think it should be warmer. So when these snapback days come and it's cold, we still put on our light jackets. Maybe we don't wear gloves. My daughter didn't bring gloves to school today, and so we feel a bit chilly. So that's how I'm feeling. I'm feeling a bit chilly. If you hear me sniffle a little bit, I apologize. I try not to do that on mic too much, but it may be inevitable given the weather. Today, I'd like to talk about another in my designers who are sitting in my collection episode. I don't know. I talked about this before in the Martin Wallace edition, that it's not uncommon for me to have one or two games by a designer just by chance. Sometimes I'll even have three, and I would consider that designer a fairly prominent person in my game collection once I have more than three games. I was thinking about which designer maybe has the biggest footprint in my collection after Martin Wallace. And it's interesting because Martin Wallace is one of those designers that I definitely say, hey, I really want to look at everything he's done. There's a publishing company, Mind Clash. They make Tricarion and Anachrony, and they have a game called Cerebria coming out. And so far, I've really liked their work so much that I have them on my everything they've done list. And I really like David Turkzy, the guy who created Anachrony, although he's one of three designers listed on the box. He is sort of the lead designer. And then he also did Redacted, which is a game I have that I quite like. And my understanding, like, he's done a couple other games that are kind of getting a buzz now. He did Budapest 19-something, Days of Ire. And that's gotten a lot of buzz. And he did a sequel called Knights of Fire that is in the same setting. He's got another game on Kickstarter right now called Dice Settlers that looks pretty good, but I'm kind of maxed out on my Kickstarter spending at the moment, so I'll have to wait and see what comes of that later. Anyway, he's got a lot of irons in the fire, and one thing I really like is that he's very responsive on Board Game Geek, so it's somebody you can actually talk to a little bit. So David Turkzy is somebody I'm sort of watching. There's a couple other designers where I have a number of their games. Richard Garfield, I have 3 of his games. Jason Hill, the founder and proprietor of Flying Frog Productions, I have 3 of his games. So 3 seems to be a kind of magic number where you can tell I really like a designer when I have 3 of their games. But if I have more than 3, that's somebody you really need to pay attention to. So the person I want to talk about today in that regard is Antoine Bauza. What's interesting to me about this is all the games I have of his I like. None of them are my favorite. I mean, some of them end up in my top 50, but none of them are my favorite. And I generally, like, if I see a game is by Antoine Bauza, I definitely know that it's been given thought and care and it's well crafted. But none of these games get me, like, really hyped. Like I say, oh man, I just am jonesing to play that Antoine Bauza game. That said, I really like all of these games, and so I'm going to tell you my 5 Antoine Bauza games that I own in ascending order of how much I like them. So the game of these that I like the least, I will introduce first, and that is Tokaido. I have Tokaido. I like it quite a bit. It's a really interesting game. If you haven't played it, it's a game in which players are pilgrims along an ancient path of pilgrimage in Japan called the Tokaido. It goes from 2 big cities, one city to another, although honestly I don't remember the names of the 2 cities. And the idea is that as you go along on this trail, you get sort of, points. You get points for doing various things that represent relaxation and pilgrimy activities. So, for example, there are hot springs along the way, and so one of the things you can do is visit a hot spring. And if you visit a hot spring, you get some number of points between 1 and 3. You draw a card and it says some number of points, indicating how relaxing the hot spring is. And at the end of the game, if you visited the hot springs more than any other player, you get, or if you are visited the most or are tied for the most, you get 3 extra points for, I guess, being the most relaxed. There's another thing where you can do paintings, and the paintings are kind of cool. There's 3 different vista spots. There's green, white, and blue vista spots. And each painting, each time you stop at one of these spaces, you do another section of your panorama painting. And the sections add together. So if the first time you stop at the green, you take a green card, and it has the left-hand portion of the green painting. Then if you stop again at the green, you get the middle card, and then the third card is the right card, and so then you have a full painting, and you've also scored 6 points, 1 point, 2 points, and 3 points. And the game goes on like this. There's temples, there's travelers who give you various things, there's food where you get points for eating food. It's a fun game, and it's nice as an intro game because everything you do gets you points. So you're constantly moving up the board. Even if you lose, you had a nice journey. So Tokaido. It also has this neat mechanism where the person who is furthest behind on the path gets to go next. So whenever you're going, you're deciding which of the next spaces coming up to use. But the further out in front of the group you go, the longer it is till you get to go again. And there's always something really nice when the person who's ahead of you jumps a couple spaces up and leaves spaces in between. Because if you're the last place player, then you get to go through all of those spaces before anyone else has a turn again. That can be kind of fun. So Tokaido, it's a lovely game. Very nice, but it's really light. It's a good end of the night game. You have 45 minutes. You want to just do something relaxing while you chat. Tokaido is a nice one. The next game, my 4th place Bauza game that I own would be Takenoko. The first one was called Tokaido. The second one is Takenoko. In Takenoko, you play the gardener. Well, you play the Emperor of Japan, and you have been given so you actually play a gardener. You play a gardener working for the Emperor of Japan, and you're trying to shape the Zen garden that the Emperor of Japan likes to visit. The problem is, the Emperor of China gave the Emperor of Japan a panda, and the panda is wandering around the garden causing all kinds of trouble. On your turn, you get to irrigate plots of land, you can grow bamboo, you can move the panda around and have it eat bamboo. And you score points by doing sort of set collections where you have the panda eat a certain number of different types of bamboo, and you get to take those, or you create a certain arrangement of different colored garden tiles, and then you get some points. Or the third option is to grow the bamboo in a particular arrangement. The game has really nice table presence. It comes with painted miniatures of a little panda bear and a little gardener. And then the highlight of the game are the bamboo pieces, which are these sort of stackable tubes that look like growing bamboo in 3 different colors. And it's a lovely game to look at, and it's a fun one. It's a little bit heavier than the lightest of games, but it certainly would be a gateway game. It's on the heavier end of gateways, I would say, just because there's 5 different actions you could take. It takes a little while to explain them, but it's a fun one. That's Takenoko, my number 4. So my number 3 game of the Antoine Bauza 5 would be Hanabi. Hanabi is a game where you play fireworks engineers who are quickly trying to put together fireworks displays because someone has knocked over a pot of fire or something, and the fireworks are all going to blow up in a minute if you don't hurry it and launch them off. The theme really means nothing. It doesn't. You don't need to know any of that to play the game. Basically, the way the game is, it's one of the most clever change-ups in game design history as far as I'm concerned. Antoine Bauza said, hey, there's lots of games where you play and you hold the cards looking at you, but there aren't very many games where you play and you hold the cards so you can't see them. Let's try that. So what he did is he had you hold the cards facing away from you so you can't see them, but everyone else can. And then on your turn, you either can give a clue or play a card or discard a card. If you give a clue, you point to someone else's hand and show them cards that are either the same number, the same color, either the same number or the same color. But you have to show them all the cards. So like you'd say these are all blue or these are all 2s, and the cards go 1 through 5. If you're playing a card, what you're doing is there's a stack of cards on the ground or on the table, and they represent the 5 different colors in the game. And your goal is to get a stack of 1 through 5 in order by color. So in your hand, you may have learned from one person that there's a bunch of 1s in your hand, and from someone else that all these cards are red. And so you're able to figure out that this red card is a 1, and so you can play that to start the red stack. And then someone else may have figured out that their 2 card is red, and they might play the 2. The problem is, the game limits how many times you can give a clue. There's a limited number of clue tokens, and every time you give one, you have to discard one. The only way to get a clue back is to discard a card without playing it. And so there's a constant give and take where you're trying to make sure you hold on to the cards that are valuable, but you also need to keep clue tokens in the game. You can also play a card, and that playing a card will also get you a clue token. Yes, I think. It's been a while. But anyway, the idea is to balance these clue tokens out while giving people clues. Hanabi's fun. It takes a little practice to get really good at it, and most groups end up giving more information than they're supposed to through habit or through table talk. And so it's really fun to try to play it using only the rules. It's a fun game, but very difficult. So that's Hanabi. That was my number 3. My number 2 Antoine Bauza game is Seven Wonders. Seven Wonders is probably his best known game. It was certainly his biggest hit. And it's a card drafting game where you take cards, put them in your hand, play one on the table, pass the cards to the next person, and the play goes around like that. And the goal is to build up resources which you then use to pay for bigger cards, which will get you points. The game is played over 3 ages, and it's got a sort of ancient world theme. It's really fun. It's a great step up from other card drafting games like Sushi Go, which is even simpler, but it's an excellent game, really fun. A variety of ways to score points, so there's a lot of depth to how you play, which I really like. There are several expansions. I haven't really played them because the friend of mine who had a copy of Seven Wonders just has the base game. But I got my own copy a couple weeks ago from that same friend because he found a copy at Goodwill. And he bought it, and I said, hey, I would love to buy that from you. And he just gave it to me because, he's a nice guy. But so now I have my own copy of Seven Wonders, and it won't surprise me if, after we've played that a few times, if the family takes to it, then I'll start looking at getting some of the expansions, the leaders or the cities or the other things that make the game a bit more elaborate. So Seven Wonders is one of my favorites. There's a lot of depth and variety to it. I highly recommend that you try it out. As an aside, or a little anecdote about Seven Wonders, I took my first trip to Origins Game Fair last year. I turned 40, and so I declared that was my birthday present, was to take my daughter and go to Origins. And while we were there, I think it was our first full day there, we got into the game hall and we were looking for a game to play, and we found somebody who was, I had a friend from Board Game Geek, and we decided to play Seven Wonders, and we were setting it up, and this family stopped by and said, hey, can we play with you? It turned out it was Bruce Glasgow, the designer of Betrayal at House on the Hill. So that was really fun to suddenly meet this person whose game I really enjoy and get to chat with him a little bit, and to play Seven Wonders. What a good time that was. So, but that is not my number 1 Antoine Bauza game. My number 1 Antoine Bauza game is, can you guess it? It's a frightening choice. It's Ghost Stories. So Ghost Stories is a game about defending a village from an onslaught of evil ghosts, particularly led by Sheng Fu, something like that, a super bad ghost who is leading this army of ghosts as they come in. It's a tower defense game, so you have 4 sides to the village, and you have to fend off these ghosts as they kind of creep toward the village and cause all sorts of trouble. If you play without really figuring out how to play well, it's a very, very, very hard game. If you know what you're doing, it's not as hard. It's still very, very hard, and I would say I've only won on the regular level a couple times, and I've won on solo several times on easy, but hardly ever on normal. I've never even tried the harder ones yet, but I'm learning. So the big trick or the difficulty with Ghost Stories is that one of the things you do to get rid of the ghosts is you have to match these little tokens, and the tokens match. One of the ways to get the tokens is to roll these dice, and the dice are not conducive to getting token matches because there's like 5 different colors of tokens, and so getting a match is pretty difficult. But in your brain, you feel like it shouldn't be that difficult, and so if you rely very often on the dice to help you do an exorcism, what happens is you end up not being able to do one, and then you lose because you do that very often. But it's a wonderful game. I don't have any of the expansions yet, in part because I'm not very good at the regular, so why would I put more money into it when the regular is still providing so much challenge for me? But it's a really interesting game. I really like it, and I think it's great played solo. I find it actually the most satisfying that way, because then it's all on me whether we won or lost. So those are my 5 Antoine Bauza games that I have. He does have a couple more that I think would be interesting to play, but nothing that really leaps out at me as I was reviewing the list for today. So I won't bother you with any of those. What's your favorite Bauza game? Let me know. You can reach out to me at Twitter at rattleboxgames or by email brendan@rattleboxgames.com. You can find me on Board Game Geek, where my username is wombat929, or you can visit our website and post comments on the show. If you're enjoying the show, I sure would appreciate a review on whatever channel you listen to it by. We have a small but regular number of listeners, and I'd love to have a slightly larger but regular number of listeners. So, or even some one-offs who try it and decide they don't like it. That's fine too. Well, that's it for me today. I had a pleasant walk. I hope that your next walk is as pleasant as mine was. Take care. Bye.
Brought to you by Rattlebox Games.